My name is Stacy, and a few months ago, my world turned upside down. I lived with my parents, my brother Ben, and his wife Vanessa in our family home, a house that held countless memories. But everything changed when my parents died in a car accident. The shock of their loss was overwhelming, and I had no time to truly process it as life quickly spiraled into chaos. Between managing their estate and settling matters with the house, I barely had a moment to grieve. Now, the dust has settled, and I find myself living with Ben and Vanessa. Things should feel calm, but with Vanessa around, it's anything but. Vanessa is a woman with a sharp tongue and a knack for passive-aggressive remarks. She seems to have decided early on that my presence in the house is a burden. Even though I work from home as an illustrator, Vanessa doesn't seem to respect that. "Stacy, do you want me to help you find a real job?" she would say, her voice dripping with condescension. "You can't just stay here forever, you know?" I've grown used to these remarks, but it doesn't make them any less frustrating. The worst part? My brother, who used to understand my work and support me, has started to echo her sentiments. "Vanessa says you're just playing around on the computer all day," Ben said one night during dinner, and the sting of his words lingered long after the meal was over. My job as an illustrator isn't something I should have to justify, yet here I was, constantly defending myself in the house I grew up in. Despite my efforts to contribute to the household, it feels like nothing I do is ever enough. I pay my share of the living expenses, including groceries and utilities. More importantly, I cover the mortgage entirely, something Vanessa seems conveniently unaware of. When our parents passed away, the house and the mortgage became my responsibility. But Vanessa's constant complaints make it seem like I'm freeloading. "You're just making things harder for Ben and me," she'd say. "We're trying to save money, but you're holding us back." The tension in the house thickens with each passing day, and it feels like I'm walking on eggshells. Even Ben, who used to be my ally, now seems distant. Vanessa has him wrapped around her finger, and the more I try to talk to him, the more he pulls away. "Vanessa says we're struggling because you're not helping enough," he said one night after following me to my room. I could feel the weight of those words pressing down on me, suffocating. "We need to save money, Stacy. You know that." I wanted to scream. How could they not see that I was already doing more than my fair share? I paid the entire mortgage, covered my own expenses, and contributed to the household. What more did they want from me? It didn't add up, and a part of me began to suspect that Vanessa wasn't being entirely honest with Ben. My suspicions grew with each passing day. Vanessa was always quick to complain about the financial strain my presence supposedly caused, but the numbers didn't add up. Ben and Vanessa were both working, and their only real expenses were their own meals and whatever utilities they used. So why wasn't their savings growing? Where was their money going? One evening, after another argument with Vanessa, I decided to get some air and headed to a nearby cafe. As I sat by the window, staring into the distance and contemplating my next steps, something caught my eye. Across the street, I saw a woman who looked strikingly like Vanessa. She was walking arm in arm with a well-dressed man, laughing and looking carefree. My heart raced. It couldn't be her. Could it? I watched as they made their way down the street and disappeared into a high-end nightclub. My mind raced with possibilities. If that was Vanessa, what was she doing with another man? And why was she spending money at a nightclub when she and Ben were supposedly struggling to save? The next morning, I couldn't shake the image of Vanessa and the man from my mind. I wanted to confront her, but I needed to be sure. Maybe I had made a mistake. Maybe it wasn't her at all. I decided to give it another day and see if I could catch her in the act again. That night, I returned to the cafe, sitting in the same spot by the window, my eyes glued to the street outside. And then, just like the night before, I saw her. Vanessa walking with the same man, heading towards the same nightclub. This time I was sure. It was her. My heart pounded as I watched them disappear into the club. I knew I couldn't ignore this any longer. Vanessa was hiding something big, and I had to confront her about it. But I needed to be smart. I couldn't just accuse her without evidence. I had to approach this carefully. The next morning, I waited for Ben to leave for work before I approached Vanessa. My hands were trembling as I knocked on her door, but I was determined to get to the bottom of this. "Vanessa, can we talk?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She looked up from her phone, raising an eyebrow. "What about?" "I saw you last night," I said, watching her closely for a reaction. "Near the station. You were with a man." For a moment, I saw a flicker of panic in her eyes, but it was quickly replaced by a dismissive smile. "You must have mistaken me for someone else," she said casually. "I was working last night." "I'm sure it was you," I pressed. "You were carrying the same bag you have right now." Vanessa's smile faltered, but she didn't break. "Like I said, you're mistaken. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have things to do." She walked past me, but the seed of doubt had been planted. I wasn't going to let this go. I needed to figure out what Vanessa was up to, and I needed to do it fast. Over the next few days, I kept a close eye on Vanessa. I paid attention to her comings and goings, her behavior around Ben, and any inconsistencies in her story. I also started digging into the household finances. If Vanessa was spending money at nightclubs, I had to find proof. One evening, I caught her slipping out of the house, dressed more elegantly than usual. I followed her discreetly, staying a few steps behind as she made her way to the same nightclub I had seen her at before. This time, I waited outside, watching as she entered the club with the same man. I didn't need any more confirmation. Vanessa was leading a double life. The next morning, I confronted her again. "I saw you last night," I said, my voice trembling with anger. "At the nightclub, with the same man. You've been lying to Ben, haven't you?" Vanessa's face paled, but she quickly composed herself. "It's none of your business what I do," she snapped. "You have no right to interfere in my life." "I do when it affects my brother," I shot back. "And when you're using the money I've been giving you for living expenses to fund your nights out." Vanessa's temper flared. "You're just a freeloading bum," she yelled. "You don't contribute to this household, and you have no idea how hard it is to save money with you around." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. How could she still accuse me of freeloading when I was the one paying the mortgage and contributing more than my fair share? The hypocrisy was staggering. "I've had enough of this," I said, my voice firm. "I'm going to tell Ben everything." "Do that, and I'll make sure you regret it," Vanessa threatened, her voice cold and dangerous. But I wasn't backing down. This had gone on long enough. It was time for the truth to come out, no matter the consequences. That evening, when Ben returned from work, I sat him down and told him everything. I told him about Vanessa's nights out, the man I had seen her with, and how she had been using their savings to fund her secret life. At first, Ben didn't want to believe it. He looked at me, his face pale with disbelief. "Are you sure?" he asked quietly. "I've seen her with my own eyes, Ben," I said, my voice heavy with the weight of the truth. "She's been lying to you." Vanessa, who had been eavesdropping from the hallway, stormed into the room. "How dare you make up lies about me?" she shouted, her face red with anger. "Ben, she's just trying to cause trouble between us." But Ben wasn't convinced. I could see the doubt creeping into his eyes as he looked between us. "Is it true?" he asked Vanessa, his voice shaking. For a moment there was silence. Then Vanessa's shoulders slumped, and she let out a long sigh. "Fine," she muttered. "I've been going out, but it's just to blow off steam. It's not what you think." Ben's expression darkened. "You've been lying to me," he said quietly. "You've been spending our savings on nightclubs while I thought we were struggling to save for a future together." Vanessa's face twisted in anger. "It's not like I was cheating or anything," she snapped. "I was just having fun. What's the big deal?" The big deal is that you lied, Ben said, his voice growing colder. And you've been blaming Stacy for our financial problems when it's been your spending all along. The room was tense with silence. Vanessa opened her mouth to argue, but no words came out. She had been caught, and there was no way out. Ben and I agreed that it was time for Vanessa to leave. She had caused enough damage, and there was no salvaging their relationship. Vanessa, realizing that she had lost, tried one last desperate move. "Fine, I'll leave," she said, her voice bitter. "But I want a share of Ben's inheritance." I shook my head. "The inheritance isn't part of the divorce settlement," I said calmly. "You'll get what's in your joint savings, and that's it." Vanessa's face fell. She had thought she'd walk away with a fortune, but now she was facing the reality of her situation. "You can't do this to me," she said weakly. But Ben stood firm. "It's over, Vanessa," he said. "We're done." Within a week, Vanessa had moved out, taking with her what little she had left. Ben and I remained in the house. Zrania, but it no longer felt like home. The memories of our parents, the weight of Vanessa's betrayal, it was all too much. We decided to sell the house and go our separate ways. 2 months later, the house sold for more than the remaining mortgage, and I used the funds to buy a small condo. It wasn't as grand as the family home, but it was mine, and that's what mattered. As for Vanessa, she quickly spiraled into debt after failing to pay her rent and continuing her extravagant lifestyle. She disappeared from our lives, leaving behind nothing but bad memories. Ben and I still keep in touch, visiting our parents' graves together and reflecting on everything we've been through. The betrayal, the lies, the heartache. It's all in the past now. And while we've both moved on, the lessons we learned will stay with us forever. We've rebuilt our relationship stronger than ever, and though the future remains uncertain, we face it together, just like family should.